Weather warning issued across Malta as heavy gusts batter island. The 19-year-old female passenger involved in a fatal LUQA crash has been released from ITU. Malta residents are up in arms over development set to replace school garden. All this and more on Lovin Daily. Good evening, Malta and Gozo, and welcome to Lovin Daily. Diacono here, joined by Lisa, Darmanin and Demajo. And make sure to stay tuned for today's interview. We have a very special guest, Audrey, Friggieri, the Commissioner for Gender-Based Violence and Domestic Violence. But before that, let's jump into the first story. And the Malta Met Office has issued a very strong weather warning, a wind warning, as southwesterly winds batter the island today. So you might have noticed that today was quite windier than usual. Let's step outside, and it is a reason. There is actually a warning which will be active until 9 p.m. this evening. Wind levels are going to increase to a very strong level across Malta and across Gozo throughout the day, and people are being urged to be cautious when travelling around. And Lovin Malta has written about this, and one of the most powerful videos was the Gozo ferry battling the choppy waters as it tried to cross the two islands, just to show the impact of the waves. And in fact, the fast ferry was cancelled as well today.
Yes, I mean, it's brutal out there today. The trees in front of my house are kind of all swaying a bit. So unless it's absolutely necessary, unless you have a very good reason, the recommendation is that you stay home. And if you do go out, please stay safe. Tim, we're moving on to a very positive story. Well, part of a positive story. So the 19-year-old girl who was a passenger in the fatal accident that happened last week in LUQA has been released from the ITU. Tragically, Ismail Grima died in the car accident, but she is finally out of the woods. Lovin Malta spoke to a police spokesperson who confirmed that she is on the road to recovery and she's out of intensive care. So from all of us here, we wish her well and a very speedy recovery, and we're happy to hear this news.
Yes, obviously this was a very tragic incident that shocked the island. Someone so young as Ismail Grima, only 21 years old. And was also very, very well loved by many people in Malta. And in fact, people are paying tribute to him in a number of ways. Some of his friends and loved ones are even tattooing his image and his face and his name on their body, so that as a clear sign that they'll remember him and will remember him for the rest of their life. So very powerful sign of tribute over there. And moving on to our next story, Malta residents are up in arms over the proposed development of a civic centre, which is set to replace part of the garden of St. Thomas More Primary School. Nearby residents have complained about this proposed development, as well as naturally the families of school children. Banners have been put up protesting it. One resident said, "Shame on the person who came up with this idea and shame on those who agree with it." Someone else, "A garden in a school, priceless, we absolutely do not need it." Now, what's worth noting about this is that the development itself is an extremely positive update. It's a civic centre, which means it's going to be used by the local council. It's going to be a public library, a public hall, a community centre as well. So all things that communities need. But it is strange that it is happening right in the middle of a garden. It sounds like robbing Peter to take Paul. And I know some people will probably say, not all schools have that garden, therefore it should be seen as a luxury, but it's not, right? It's something that, if anything, more schools should emulate, and we should be adding more gardens to schools.
And not taking them away.
Not taking them away. I'm sure they can find somewhere else in Malta where they can build a civic centre.
I agree, and there were also a couple of proposals made for alternate sites for this development, and also when you think that the local council is going to be based there on kind of school grounds, How do you access the local council? Do you have to go to the school? Will there be sort of reduced hours? Or it makes you think sort of why that site and not another suitable one, which I'm sure that there are. A number of people have put forward their protest to the development, and anyone who is opposed to it has until the 3rd of January to submit their objections to the relevant authorities. Talking of opposition, Tim, I don't know if you saw the press conference today at Dar Centrali. It was being held for International Day for People with Disabilities, and the Nationalist Party was putting forward a number of proposals for the disability sector. And a few minutes into the press conference, there was a lot of noise that could be heard outside. There was shouting, there was whistling, and you could hear there was quite a fun and party atmosphere happening outside. And the deputy leader, David Ajus, tried hard to keep a straight face and keep talking, but obviously the atmosphere got the better of him, and he broke into a big smile, and then he addressed the elephant in the room and said that the newly graduated students had come down to Dar Centrali to celebrate and to have some fun with the the party.
Kudos to him for soldiering on and not giving up the press conference, but he kept on going, shouting instead of speaking, as the students could be heard whistling and screaming behind him. I mean, it's obviously the a time many university students look very fondly at the moment they can finally put all behind you. But these actually have it a bit more than most, because they actually had to suffer a year or 2 years at home.
Yes,
so,
and a lot of these graduations should have taken place last year.
So they probably need double the number of celebrations as previous groups of graduates have. And yes, though, just a
nice light-hearted moment.
Nice light-hearted moment
Absolutely.
in the political scene.
Absolutely.
Moving on to something not so light-hearted in the political scene, though, a protest will be held this evening in front of Parliament, calling for the resignation of the Speaker, Angelo Farrugia. It's being organised by Repubblica, by Occupy Justice, the people who often organise these anti-government protests. But this one seems to have gained a bit more traction than most because of the level of endorsement it has received. Specifically, Lawrence Gonzi, the former Prime Minister, has endorsed it not once but twice. So he's encouraging people to get out on the streets, brave the cold weather, saying that even if you don't say a word, the mere fact that you're there, physically present, will send a message home. In a nutshell, the problem over here is because there was an issue with Ros Yankotayar, the Labour MP, who was investigated by the Standards Commissioner over payments she received from Jorgen Fenech. The Standards Commissioner found she breached ethics by not publishing the amount that she received, the €9,000 birthday present in her parliamentary assets, and the committee looking into it also agreed with adopting this report. So, however, the Speaker had a choice. He could have sent some kind of message to not only MPs but the society in general that this is unacceptable, and instead he just didn't even give her a slap on the wrist, just told her it's what happened, and that's it. And now, I don't think he was expecting the backlash to move against him, because that's what happened. It's gone against him. In fact, the opposition at the moment are speaking in Parliament, a motion to condemn the Speaker's decision. Lack of response,
Absolutely.
lack of impartiality. They're saying, you're subservient to the government, you're not meant to be, you're meant to be representing all of us, not here to defend the government, and now the protesters are calling him out as well. So very clear that Repubblica want to revive the spirit of the famous 2019 protests, and they're not going to let them get away with it. If there's something that's wrong, there will be a protest.
And there should be, Tim, there's a lack of accountability in general, I think, in Malta, a lack of accountability for actions that people take and inactions that people take. And Repubblica, thankfully, we have an organisation that will not stand for it, that can be a voice for many. Like you said, the protest has been endorsed, and they are calling for as many people as possible to join them tonight. I did say earlier there is a weather warning and do not go out unless you absolutely have to, but this is a very worthy cause and something that you should, if you are able to, definitely show your support to. Lovin Malta will be there as well. Sasha Vella will be down there covering the event live. So if anyone can join them tonight, there's power in numbers and your voice makes a difference.
It does. And we're now going to interview Audrey Friggieri, the Commissioner for Gender-Based Violence and Domestic Violence. Before that, we're going to just cut to a brief video.
Everyone says that young people are the future, but all too often the powers that be suddenly become deaf when we want our voices heard. That's where the European Parliament has stepped in, giving young people a platform to share their ideas in one of the most powerful forums in the world. The European Youth event took place between the 8th and 9th of October, bringing together 10,000 young people to discuss more than 2,000 ideas for the future of Europe. With the 20 most popular ideas being presented to Parliament on the 22nd and 23rd of October, there are an incredible set of proposals covering some of the crucial issues facing the EU. It's clear that the environment is a priority for young people who presented concrete ideas looking to make recycling easier around the block and ensure that companies are held accountable for their role in climate change, something which has been lacking for far too long. Rule of law concerns in the EU should also be addressed, with young people demanding a more effective mechanism to protect the EU values that we all take for granted. What's clear is that young people support a federal Europe and are ready to work together to help solve today's and tomorrow's problems. Whether that's boosting our healthcare systems, our educational structures, and our digital landscape, or promoting multilingualism and a stronger asylum seekers policy. Ultimately, young people are demanding that we start learning from our mistakes to help create better policies in the future for you and me. How do you say awesome work in 24 languages? Well, whatever the case, I'm sure that young people will certainly have the answer. Should young people be the drivers of change? Let us know in the comments below.
Welcome back to Lovin Daily. With me now is Audrey Friggieri, Commissioner for Gender-Based and Domestic Violence. Thank you very much for being with us here today.
Thank you for inviting me.
So, you're working very hard in this 16 days of activism against gender-based violence.
Yes.
What is this campaign about exactly?
Yes, this is an international campaign against violence against women, mainly gender-based violence. But it's not just about women, because everybody can be a target of abuse and violence. But gender-based violence specifically refers to abuse that you get because of your gender. And it is mostly girls and women that are affected, as ample research shows. So during the 16 days of activism, we have a theme, so we can work around it to campaign and send this message to people, to be aware of their behavior on a personal level and even at work, you know. So these are 16 days when we step up our activism, because we're active all year round. The Commission is active all year round. We're committed to having campaigns. But during these 16 days, there's an increase because we are joined by stakeholders and entities all around the island. And together we celebrate and are activists for during this time.
Why was this campaign set up exactly?
Sorry?
Why was it set up?
Why? Because, as I said before, this is an important issue, you know, in our relationships. There is this sexism, there is this discrimination, and it is, you know, we talk about domestic violence, which happens inside the home, but it's not just about that. So gender-based violence is more widespread, and it's a global phenomenon. It's not something that belongs to us, you know. So it's the United Nations, it's 30 years ago it started. The United Nations set this up. There was this movement that wanted to send a clear message to the world, listen, this has to stop. You know, this violence against women and girls has to stop. And it's violence on various levels. We talk of human trafficking, of gender mutilation, and all kinds of discrimination on a personal level and at work.
So what is the goal of this campaign ultimately? Is it simply to raise awareness among the people, among the general public, that this is out and this is wrong? Or are you lobbying for something to change?
Well, yes, we want a paradigm shift in our society. It's not just on a national level, it is something international. Sort of this culture of discrimination, the sexism, the patriarchalism. In fact, the theme for this year's 16 Days of Activism is "Your voice can set you free," because discrimination continues and thrives in silence, when we are silent. And this is very difficult and sensitive, because it is a well-known fact that women especially, but victims in generally, find it hard to speak up, to finally speak up about their perpetrator, about what's happening to them behind closed doors, And of course, the reason is, it's complicated. There is a fear of your perpetrator, because, the violence could escalate if you speak, even to a trusted friend. There is the shame element, because very often we love this person who is close to us. Sometimes it's a relative.
Yeah.
It's someone you love, you've invested in. So you find it hard to kind of speak against this person. For you, it feels also a bit like betrayal, even though he's causing you harm. So this issue surrounding voice, just give voice to your what you're experiencing, is fundamental in when we are campaigning against domestic violence and gender-based violence.
So, finally, how can people find out more about this campaign? Do you have a website or a Facebook page?
Yes, they can find
Instagram?
us on Stop Violence Malta on Instagram.
Stop
Violence Malta, yes. And we have our Facebook page. They can look us up. So, Commission on Gender-Based Violence and Domestic Violence. We continually share content related to our campaigns and messages of empowerment to those women out there, those girls, but not just, because there are members of the LGBTIQ community who are involved, in the sense that they also get gender-based violence. You have people living with disability. So when we speak about women, you have to think about the intersectionality of women. You could be an immigrant, and you could be gay. You're gay, you're an immigrant, and maybe you have some kind of disability, and you're getting this abuse. So, as the Istanbul Convention states as well, there are cohorts of people in our society who are more likely to receive this violence. So that is why it's complicated, and we target our campaigns to these specific groups to make people aware out there that when we say woman or victims, you're not speaking about some stereotype here. It could be all kinds of people. There are many stories. Each story is different. Each context is different. So that is why what we do, our campaigns, our spreading of information, even in schools, is so essential to cause a paradigm shift, and the hope of causing a paradigm shift eventually, at least.
Let's hope this will actually happen, because this is a problem in society which doesn't often get talked about. Audrey Friggieri, thank you so much for being with us here today. Thank you for following us on Lovin Daily. Make sure you follow lovinmalta.com for all the latest developments, and have an evening full of lovin'.